Introduction: Rethinking Wealth. Have you ever paused for a moment and asked yourself, what does it really mean to be wealthy? Most of us, almost instinctively, think of money. A bigger bank account, a nicer house, maybe the freedom to buy anything we want. Society has trained us to equate wealth with possessions, status, and success. It's on every billboard, in every commercial, and even in the quiet comparisons we make with our neighbors, friends, or colleagues. But let's be honest, how many people do you know who have all the money they could ever need, yet still feel restless, anxious, or even empty inside? Isn't it strange that we can have so much and still feel like something is missing? This is where the wisdom of the Buddha invites us to look deeper. In Buddhist teachings, wealth is not just a number. It is not simply how much gold you can store, or how many digits your paycheck has. True wealth, the kind that doesn't fade, doesn't get stolen, and doesn't disappear with market crashes, lives inside of you. It is measured by your peace of mind, your compassion, your ability to let go, and the freedom you feel in your own heart. Think about this for a moment. If someone gave you $1 billion, but also gave you constant fear, sleepless nights, and a restless spirit, would you really call that wealth? On the other hand, imagine someone who lives a modest life, maybe in a small home, maybe with little material luxury, but wakes up each morning with gratitude, greets others with kindness, and goes to sleep without regret. Who is richer in this picture? The Buddha once said that contentment is the greatest wealth. That might sound simple, but it is revolutionary in today's world. Because contentment doesn't depend on the external world bending to your will. It depends on how you relate to life itself. Are you constantly chasing what you don't have, or are you able to recognize the treasure in what's already here? I remember speaking with an old monk who lived in a tiny temple on a hillside. He had almost nothing by worldly standards, just a robe, a bowl, and a mat to sleep on. Yet, when you looked into his eyes, there was a lightness, a joy, as if he carried an endless treasure within. He told me, the wealthiest man is the one who has no fear of losing, because he holds nothing too tightly. Those words struck me deeply. Isn't that a different kind of richness we rarely talk about? And so, in this journey together, I want to invite you to explore what wealth truly means when we step beyond the narrow lens of money. Over the next 10 reflections, we'll look into different dimensions of wealth: wealth of the heart, wealth of wisdom, wealth of compassion, health, time, freedom, and more. Each of these is a kind of treasure that the Buddha recognized as more enduring than gold. So before we dive in, I'll leave you with this question. When you think of your own life, what treasure do you already carry that no amount of money could buy? Because maybe, just maybe, you are already far richer than you've ever realized. Inner wealth. When we hear the word wealth, most of us immediately think of bank accounts, investments, and possessions. But let me ask you something. Have you ever met someone who seemed to have it all, yet deep down, they were restless, anxious, maybe even unhappy? And on the other hand, have you ever met someone with very little material wealth, yet when you were with them, you felt a sense of calm, of peace, almost like they carried a quiet treasure inside? This is what Buddhism calls inner wealth. True wealth begins not in what we own, but in the state of our heart and mind. When a person is free from craving, when they are not endlessly pulled by desires, comparisons, or envy, they are already rich. They may not own much, but they have something money can never buy: peace of mind. Think about it this way: if you're constantly chasing what's next, you never arrive. There's always another thing to buy, another goal to reach, another standard to meet. But when your heart is calm, when you're not dictated by the need to have more, suddenly you realize you already have enough. That sense of sufficiency, that inner contentment, is the foundation of true wealth. I remember once visiting a meditation center where an elderly nun lived. She had no possessions apart from her robe and her alms bowl. Her room was bare, her meals were simple, and yet, whenever she spoke, her voice carried a serenity that was almost magnetic. You could feel it. People came to her not because she was famous or powerful, but because being in her presence felt like resting in the shade of a tree on a hot summer day. She embodied the truth that inner peace is the highest treasure. Now ask yourself, in your own life, how much time and energy do you spend on worrying about what you don't have? How often do you compare yourself to others and feel that what you have isn't enough? And imagine for a moment, what if the richest version of you isn't the one with the newest car or the biggest house, but the one who feels light, unburdened, and free from constant wanting? Buddhist teachings remind us that craving is endless. If you feed it, it only grows stronger. But the moment you stop feeding it, the moment you recognize that peace comes from within, you've already tapped into a form of wealth no stock market can crash, no thief can steal, and no age can diminish. This doesn't mean we shouldn't enjoy the comforts of life. It simply means that our sense of worth and happiness doesn't have to depend on them. Imagine holding a cup of tea in your hands. If you're restless, your mind will think, I wish this was coffee. I wish I had a bigger cup. I wish someone else was here to drink with me. But if your heart is at peace, even a simple cup of tea becomes a moment of pure richness. So, maybe the question isn't, how much do I have, but rather, how free am I from needing more? That's the measure of inner wealth. And once you taste it, you realize it's far more enduring than money, because it gives you the one thing everyone is truly searching for, peace. Wealth in gratitude. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you paused, really paused, to appreciate what you already have? Not what you're working toward, not what you wish for, but what is right here, right now. It's easy to overlook, isn't it? Our culture often pushes us to focus on the next achievement, the next purchase, the next milestone. But Buddhism offers a gentle reminder: contentment itself is happiness. The Buddha taught that a grateful heart is already wealthy. Think about it, when you're truly grateful, you stop measuring life by what's missing and start seeing the abundance that's already present. Gratitude transforms even ordinary moments into treasures. A simple meal tastes richer. A quiet evening feels complete. Even challenges become teachers. Let me share a story. A friend once told me about her grandmother, who grew up during very difficult times. She never had much money, but she carried a small ritual every morning. She would sit by the window, hold her cup of tea, and whisper a quiet thank you. Thank you for the sunlight. Thank you for another day of breath. Thank you for this moment. To her grandchildren, she seemed like the happiest person they knew. Not because she had more than others, but because she noticed what she already had. That simple act of gratitude made her one of the wealthiest women in spirit. And isn't that true for all of us? Gratitude is like a lens. Put it on, and the same life suddenly looks brighter. Without it, even abundance feels like scarcity. You might have noticed this yourself. When you're in a state of gratitude, envy fades, anxiety loosens its grip, and your heart feels lighter. Now, here's something to reflect on. How often do we say, I'll be happy when? I'll be happy when I get that raise, when I buy that house, when I lose those extra pounds, when I finally go on that vacation. But gratitude says, I can be happy now, because what I have is already enough. That doesn't mean we stop striving or growing, but it means we stop postponing happiness until conditions are perfect. In fact, research today confirms what the Buddha taught centuries ago. People who regularly practice gratitude experience more joy, stronger relationships, and even better health. Gratitude shifts your nervous system, calms your mind, and builds resilience. It's not just spiritual wisdom, it's practical medicine for the heart. Here's a simple practice you can try tonight. Before you go to bed, name 3 things you are grateful for. They don't have to be grand. Sometimes the smallest things carry the biggest light. Maybe it's the laughter you shared with a friend, the warmth of your bed, or even the taste of fresh water. If you do this consistently, you'll notice how your perception of wealth changes. You'll see that you're richer than you ever thought. So let's circle back. What is wealth? According to Buddhism, it's not the size of your bank account, but the size of your gratitude. Gratitude is the seed of lasting abundance. Because when you are grateful, you live in fullness, not lack. And in that fullness, you discover a treasure that can never be taken away. So I'll leave you with this question. What are 3 things you could be grateful for today that money could never buy? Maybe the real measure of your wealth isn't what you own, but what you appreciate. Wealth in wisdom. When we think of wealth, we often picture material abundance, money, property, maybe even influence. But let me ask you this. What good is all the money in the world if we lack the wisdom to use it well? Haven't we seen people who had everything they wanted, only to lose it through poor choices, blind desires, or the inability to see the bigger picture? In Buddhism, wisdom is considered one of the highest forms of wealth. Why? Because wisdom is the compass that guides us through life's storms. It allows us to see clearly, to distinguish right from wrong, and to recognize the impermanent nature of all things. Without wisdom, we can be led astray by temporary pleasures, blinded by cravings that never end, and trapped in cycles of suffering. But with wisdom, even the simplest life can be full of richness and meaning. Think about it. How many times have we chased something we thought would make us happy, only to realize later it was just a passing illusion? A new car, a promotion, someone's approval, yes, they may feel good in the moment, but the satisfaction doesn't last. Wisdom teaches us to look deeper. It whispers, this too will pass. And when you understand impermanence, you stop clinging so desperately. You start to enjoy what you have without the fear of losing it. That's a freedom no money can buy. I once heard a story about a king who asked a sage, what is the one truth that applies in every situation, in joy and sorrow, in wealth and poverty? The sage replied, this too shall pass. Imagine holding that perspective in your daily life. Instead of being swept away by every rise and fall, wisdom anchors you. It shows you the bigger picture. And let's be honest, in today's world, we are drowning in information, but starving for wisdom. We can Google almost anything, but does that mean we truly understand how to live? Information is knowing the price of something. Wisdom is knowing its value. And it's wisdom, not information, that brings true richness to our lives. So, how do we cultivate this kind of wealth? In Buddhism, wisdom arises through mindfulness, reflection, and understanding cause and effect. When you see that every action has consequences, every word, every choice, you begin to live more intentionally. You stop wasting energy on what's shallow and start investing in what truly matters: kindness, clarity, compassion, and peace. Let me offer you this reflection. What if wisdom is not about adding more to your life, but about seeing more clearly what's already there? Sometimes it's as simple as realizing that chasing endless desires will never bring fulfillment. Sometimes it's learning that letting go is the wisest choice you can make. So, I invite you to consider, do you measure your wealth by the size of your possessions, or by the depth of your understanding? Because a wise person can turn even loss into a lesson, even pain into growth, even impermanence into peace. That kind of wealth doesn't depreciate. It grows richer the more you share it. In the end, wealth and wisdom is the kind of treasure that cannot be stolen, cannot be devalued, and cannot be lost. It is wealth that guides you not just through success, but through failure. And perhaps, that is the richest form of all. Wealth in wisdom. When we think of wealth, we often picture material abundance, money, property, maybe even influence. But let me ask you this. What good is all the money in the world if we lack the wisdom to use it well? Haven't we seen people who had everything they wanted, only to lose it through poor choices, blind desires, or the inability to see the bigger picture? In Buddhism, wisdom is considered one of the highest forms of wealth. Why? Because wisdom is the compass that guides us through life's storms. It allows us to see clearly, to distinguish right from wrong, and to recognize the impermanent nature of all things. Without wisdom, we can be led astray by temporary pleasures, blinded by cravings that never end, and trapped in cycles of suffering. But with wisdom, even the simplest life can be full of richness and meaning. Think about it. How many times have we chased something we thought would make us happy, only to realize later it was just a passing illusion? A new car, a promotion, someone's approval, yes, they may feel good in the moment, but the satisfaction doesn't last. Wisdom teaches us to look deeper. It whispers, this too will pass. And when you understand impermanence, you stop clinging so desperately. You start to enjoy what you have without the fear of losing it. That's a freedom no money can buy. I once heard a story about a king who asked a sage, what is the one truth that applies in every situation, in joy and sorrow, in wealth and poverty? The sage replied, this too shall pass. Imagine holding that perspective in your daily life. Instead of being swept away by every rise and fall, wisdom anchors you. It shows you the bigger picture. And let's be honest, in today's world, we are drowning in information, but starving for wisdom. We can Google almost anything, but does that mean we truly understand how to live? Information is knowing the price of something. Wisdom is knowing its value. And it's wisdom, not information, that brings true richness to our lives. So, how do we cultivate this kind of wealth? In Buddhism, wisdom arises through mindfulness, reflection, and understanding cause and effect. When you see that every action has consequences, every word, every choice, you begin to live more intentionally. You stop wasting energy on what's shallow and start investing in what truly matters: kindness, clarity, compassion, and peace. Let me offer you this reflection. What if wisdom is not about adding more to your life, but about seeing more clearly what's already there? Sometimes it's as simple as realizing that chasing endless desires will never bring fulfillment. Sometimes it's learning that letting go is the wisest choice you can make. So, I invite you to consider, do you measure your wealth by the size of your possessions, or by the depth of your understanding? Because a wise person can turn even loss into a lesson, even pain into growth, even impermanence into peace. That kind of wealth doesn't depreciate, it grows richer the more you share it. In the end, wealth and wisdom is the kind of treasure that cannot be stolen, cannot be devalued, and cannot be lost. It is wealth that guides you not just through success, but through failure. And perhaps, that is the richest form of all. Inner freedom as true wealth. Have you ever noticed how much of our stress comes from feeling trapped by expectations, by responsibilities, or by the fear of losing what we already have? We often think of wealth as something external, something that gives us security. But there's a deeper kind of wealth that no one can take away, the wealth of inner freedom. What does that mean? Imagine a person who owns everything money can buy, but who constantly fears losing it. Every night, they lie awake worrying about markets crashing, competitors rising, or relationships shifting. On the outside, they look wealthy. But inside, they are living in a prison built by their own fears. Now picture someone who lives more simply, but whose heart is light. They don't cling to possessions, they don't depend on approval, and they don't let fear dictate their choices. That person is free, and that is true wealth. Buddhist wisdom teaches that freedom isn't just about having no limits in the outer world. It's about the mind being unchained. Inner freedom comes from the ability to choose, not based on fear or attachment, but on clarity and peace. When you're not controlled by craving, by the need to prove yourself, or by the fear of losing what you love, you suddenly discover a space inside where joy naturally flows. Think about this. Have you ever held onto something, maybe a job, a relationship, or even an old habit, long after it stopped bringing you peace? You stayed because you were afraid of what might happen if you let go. That fear is exactly what takes away our freedom. The wealth of inner freedom is the courage to release what no longer serves you, to walk lightly even when life changes, and to stand tall without needing the world's approval. In my own journey, I've noticed that the moments I felt richest weren't the times when I gained something, but when I let go. Letting go of resentment brought me more peace than any paycheck. Letting go of the fear of judgment gave me more joy than any applause. Each time I released something heavy, I felt lighter, freer, and in that freedom, I found a kind of wealth that money could never buy. Here's the paradox: the freer you are inside, the less you're controlled by fear, and the more confidently you can actually enjoy life. You're not afraid of loss, because you know happiness doesn't depend on clinging. You're not desperate for approval, because your worth isn't defined by someone else's opinion. You're not driven by craving, because you've tasted a deeper joy, the joy of simply being at peace with yourself. So let me ask you, what would your life look like if you weren't afraid to lose? What choices would you make if fear wasn't whispering in your ear every day? That is the vision of true inner wealth, living with freedom of heart and mind, untouched by the tides of gain and loss. When we cultivate that freedom, we discover that wealth isn't about how much we hold, but how lightly we can walk. That is the kind of richness that no market can crash, no thief can steal, and no storm can wash away. Wealth through health and energy. We often measure wealth by numbers in a bank account, but let me ask you this: what good is all that money if you don't have the energy to enjoy it? Imagine someone who has every luxury, cars, houses, fine meals, but wakes up each morning feeling exhausted, their body heavy, their mind clouded. Is that true wealth? Or is it more like being rich in possessions, but poor in life itself? The Buddha often reminded us that this body is not permanent, but while we still have it, it is our greatest vehicle for experiencing the world. Your health, your vitality, your ability to breathe deeply and walk freely, these are treasures often overlooked. True wealth includes the strength to play with your children, the stamina to chase after your dreams, the clarity to focus on what matters, and the joy of feeling fully alive in each moment. Think about it: if you lose your health, even the simplest joys, sharing a meal, traveling, laughing with friends, become difficult. But when your body and mind are nourished, even the smallest things feel beautiful: a morning walk under the sun, the taste of fresh fruit, the calm of a good night's sleep. This is the richness that money alone can never guarantee. I remember speaking to a man who had worked tirelessly his whole life, climbing the ladder of success. He told me, "I earned everything I thought I wanted, but I neglected my body along the way. Now I have money, but I pay it back in medical bills and missed moments with my family." His words were heavy with regret, but also with truth. Without health, our wealth quickly becomes a burden. But here's the empowering part: cultivating this kind of wealth is within your reach, no matter where you are in life. Every time you choose a walk over scrolling endlessly, every time you breathe deeply instead of rushing, every time you rest your mind through mindfulness instead of letting stress control you, you are making a deposit into your true bank of wealth, your health and energy. And it's not just about physical health. It's also about the energy of the mind and spirit. Have you noticed how draining negative emotions can be? Anger, resentment, constant worry, they steal more energy than lack of sleep. On the other hand, a heart filled with kindness and gratitude feels light, energized, and alive. This is why spiritual practices, meditation, and compassion are as essential as exercise and nutrition. They fuel us from the inside out. So let me ask you, are you investing as much in your body and mind as you are in your financial security? Because wealth without health is like water in a broken vessel. It slips away before you can truly use it. Real wealth is waking up with energy, moving through your day with ease, and lying down at night with a body that feels cared for and a mind that feels at peace. That is the kind of richness that allows you to live fully, to love deeply, and to experience life in its most vivid colors. Wealth through meaningful relationships. When we think about wealth, our minds often jump to money, investments, or material comfort. But pause for a moment and ask yourself, what would all of that mean without someone to share it with? Imagine achieving success, coming home to a big, beautiful house, yet finding it empty, silent, and cold. That isn't abundance. That's loneliness wrapped in luxury. True wealth shines brightest in the connections we hold dear. A sincere friendship, a family that supports us, a partner who truly understands us, these are treasures no bank can measure. The Buddha once said that having good friends on the path is not just part of the spiritual life, it is the whole of it. Why? Because relationships shape us, lift us, and sometimes carry us when we cannot carry ourselves. Think of a time when life felt heavy, and then someone simply sat by your side, listened without judgment, or offered you kindness without asking for anything in return. In that moment, didn't you feel rich, richer than money could ever make you? That's the wealth of human connection. But meaningful relationships don't happen by chance. They grow through care, honesty, and presence. It's easy to get caught in the business of life, chasing goals and deadlines, and forget that the people we love need our time more than our things. You can give someone a gift, but the greatest gift will always be your genuine presence, your willingness to listen, to laugh, to be there. I once met a man who spent his younger years building his empire, telling himself he would spend time with his children later. Years passed, and one day he realized his children were grown, carrying their own lives, and the moments he longed for could never be bought back. He had money, but he told me, I miss the real riches, the everyday laughter, the messy dinners, the small talks. His story was a quiet reminder that time is the currency of love. And meaningful relationships aren't just about family or close friends. They also include how we connect to our community, our neighbors, even strangers. A simple smile, a kind word, a moment of understanding with someone you may never see again. These moments enrich the fabric of our lives and remind us that we are not alone. So let me ask you, are you nurturing your relationships with the same dedication you put into your work? Do you invest as much in listening, caring, and forgiving as you do in earning and achieving? Because in the end, when the bank accounts are closed and the possessions fade, the people who stand by your side, that is where your true wealth will be revealed. Real wealth is the warmth of a shared meal, the comfort of a hand held in silence, the joy of knowing you are loved not for what you own, but for who you are. These are the riches that last, the ones that stay with us even as everything else changes. Wealth in time. Time is the one currency no one can earn back once it's spent. You can lose money and make it again, but once a day is gone, it's gone forever. And yet, so often, we treat time like it's unlimited. We waste it on distractions, on worries, or chasing things that don't truly matter. But if we look deeply, we see, wealth isn't just about how much we own, it's about how we choose to spend the hours of our lives. Think about it. If someone handed you $1 million, but told you that you only had one day left to live, would that money really mean anything? Most of us would gladly trade all the riches in the world for just a little more time with the people we love, or a few more chances to live fully, awake, and present. That's why, in Buddhist wisdom, time is seen as one of the greatest forms of wealth. The person who knows how to honor time, using it to learn, to grow, to practice mindfulness, to nurture relationships, is already rich beyond measure. Every moment becomes a treasure, every day an opportunity. The Buddha often reminded his followers, do not waste your life. Be diligent today, for tomorrow may never come. These words aren't meant to scare us, but to wake us up. Life is fragile, and that's what makes it precious. I once met a woman who told me, I used to think I was too busy to sit with my kids, to take a walk in the park, or to call my parents. Then one day, I realized that the things I thought were urgent had stolen years I could never get back. Her story is not unique, it's a mirror for many of us. We often trade time for achievements, forgetting that time itself is the true achievement. So let me ask you, how are you spending your time? Is it aligned with your values, or is it being consumed by endless scrolling, unnecessary stress, or things that won't matter a year from now? What if, instead, you chose to invest time in what truly feeds your soul, reading, meditating, sharing kindness, creating something meaningful, or simply sitting in silence and breathing deeply? When you use time wisely, you create wealth that no inflation can touch. Every sunrise you witness, every meaningful conversation you share, every skill you develop, every moment you dedicate to compassion, these are deposits in the bank of your life, and they grow richer with age. Real wealth isn't about having more hours, it's about having more presence in the hours you already have. Imagine if, instead of rushing through the day, you pause to fully taste your morning tea, to really hear the laughter of a friend, to notice the beauty of the world around you. In those moments, you're not just passing time, you're living it. And that's the truth. The richest among us aren't those who have the longest lives, but those who live the deepest lives. To be wealthy in time means to live with intention, with gratitude, and with awareness that every breath is a gift. Wealth in the ability to let go. We often think of wealth as the things we hold on to, the possessions we keep, the titles we earn, the victories we collect. But in the wisdom of the Buddha, real richness doesn't come from clinging. It comes from the ability to let go. Letting go, the Buddha said, is the key to freedom. And freedom, after all, is one of the highest forms of wealth. Think about how heavy it feels to carry resentment. When someone hurts you, and you replay it again and again in your mind, who really suffers? Not the person you resent, but you. Anger, jealousy, greed, fear, they are like stones we carry in a backpack. The more we hold on, the heavier life feels. And yet, the moment we set them down, we realize we were always free to walk lighter. Isn't that a form of wealth greater than gold? I once spoke with a man who admitted he had spent years holding onto bitterness toward a family member. He thought his anger was protecting him, but in truth, it was only draining his peace. The day he finally forgave, not because the other person changed, but because he chose to release that burden, he said, "It feels like I've taken off chains I didn't know I was wearing." That's the wealth of letting go, the wealth of peace. Letting go doesn't mean we stop caring. It doesn't mean we ignore injustice or abandon responsibility. It means we stop letting negative emotions rule our hearts. To let go is to choose love over hate, understanding over judgment, and trust over fear. It's saying, I will not let this pain own me. Think of your own life for a moment. What are you holding onto that's making you poorer inside? Is it an old wound? A grudge? A constant desire for more that never seems satisfied? Imagine what it would feel like to loosen your grip, even just a little. To breathe lighter, to sleep more peacefully, to walk through life with open hands instead of clenched fists. There's a beautiful paradox here. The more we let go, the more space we create for true abundance. When you release greed, gratitude flows in. When you drop jealousy, joy finds room to bloom. When you let go of fear, courage quietly takes its place. Letting go isn't losing, it's gaining what truly matters. And here's something practical. Letting go can be practiced in small, everyday ways. Let go of the need to be right in every argument. Let go of rushing through your day as if you're being chased. Let go of the belief that your worth is measured by your possessions. Each release is a step toward a richer, freer life. So maybe wealth isn't in what we hold, but in what we release. A wealthy heart is not one overflowing with possessions, but one free from chains of anger, greed, and fear. When we learn to let go, we discover a deeper truth. Happiness was never about adding more, but about carrying less. That is the silent richness of letting go, a wealth of freedom, lightness, and unshakable peace. Wealth in the meaning of life. When we talk about being rich, most people immediately think of money, property, or status. But let me invite you to pause for a moment and look a little deeper. Have you ever met someone who didn't have much by society's standards, yet when you were around them, you felt their life was overflowing with meaning and warmth? That's a kind of wealth we often overlook, the wealth of living with purpose. True richness is not measured by the size of your bank account, but by the depth of your heart and the clarity of your intentions. It's about finding meaning in the small, ordinary things. brewing a cup of tea with mindfulness, listening deeply when a friend shares their struggles, or even putting your full care into the work you do, no matter how simple it seems. These actions, when done with presence and sincerity, give life its richness. Think about it. How many people spend their entire lives chasing after more, but never ask themselves why? They climb ladders, they fill their homes with possessions, but inside they feel an emptiness. Meanwhile, someone else with far less might live each day with gratitude, purpose, and love, and their life radiates a richness that no amount of money can buy. For me, the most meaningful moments are not when I achieve something grand, but when I connect deeply with myself, with others, or with life itself. I remember a time when I simply sat by a river, watching the water flow. There was no agenda, no profit to gain, and yet, that moment felt profoundly rich. Why? Because it reminded me that life is not about having more, but about being present enough to see the beauty that's already here. Let me ask you, what would it mean for you to live a wealthy life beyond money? Maybe it's giving your children not just material gifts, but the gift of your attention. Maybe it's putting your heart into a craft or project that helps others. Maybe it's choosing to live with kindness, so your very presence becomes a blessing to the people around you. The Buddha often taught that meaning is found not in chasing desires, but in living with right intention and compassion. When you do something wholeheartedly, when you leave behind even a small trace of goodness in someone's life, you are building a wealth that no one can take away. That's the kind of legacy that lasts, not the houses, not the titles, but the love and meaning you planted in the lives of others. So, real wealth is this: to live fully, to love deeply, and to serve sincerely. When you align your actions with your heart, every step becomes meaningful. And in that meaning, you'll discover a richness that surpasses money, a richness of the soul. Conclusion: living truly wealthy. As we reach the end of this journey together, I want to leave you with one simple but powerful reminder: money and fame are only tools, not destinations. They can open doors, they can provide comfort, but they cannot guarantee a truly rich life. In the Buddhist way of seeing, wealth is not about accumulation, it's about alignment. Alignment between your heart, your wisdom, your compassion, your health, and the meaning you choose to live by. Think about it. You can have millions in the bank and still feel empty at night. Or you can have modest means, but wake up every morning with peace in your heart, love in your relationships, and a sense of purpose that guides your steps. Which life feels richer to you? True wealth is not a number, it is harmony. It's when your mind is calm, your body is cared for, your actions come from compassion, and your days are filled with meaning. It's the kind of wealth that money can't buy and no loss can take away. I often think of wealth as a garden. Money may buy the soil, the water, the tools, but the true richness comes from what you plant and nurture within it. If you sow seeds of kindness, gratitude, and wisdom, your life will bloom in ways far beyond material success. People will feel safe around you, inspired by you, and touched by your presence. And isn't that the greatest kind of abundance? Let me ask you, when was the last time you felt genuinely wealthy, not because of what you owned, but because of how you lived? Maybe it was a moment of laughter with your family. Maybe it was the quiet pride after helping someone in need. Or maybe it was just watching a sunset, realizing that life itself is the greatest treasure. The Buddha taught that blessings, wisdom, and mindful living are the foundations of real wealth. When you cultivate merit through good deeds, grow wisdom through reflection, and live fully in each moment, you discover that wealth is not something to chase, it's something already within you, waiting to be recognized. So, living truly wealthy means this: use money as a tool, but never mistake it for the goal. The goal is to live with depth, with compassion, with awareness. To embrace your health, to cherish your loved ones, and to walk a path that leaves traces of kindness behind you. That's the kind of wealth that expands the more you share it, the kind that no one can steal, and the kind that follows you even beyond this life. My dear friends, if you carry just one thought with you after this video, let it be this: The richest life is not found in your bank account, but in your heart. And when you live fully, wisely, and compassionately, you'll realize you've been wealthy all along.